Hi, everybody. We are live, and I'll introduce myself really quickly before we get to the fun main event, which is our guest for today, Sonya Lalli. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. My name's Jeannie DeVita, and I'm the owner of Romance Writing Academy. We are a romance writing school. We teach people craft, and I'm a developmental editor professionally. I teach writing in lots of different places, and I'm also a published romance author under various pen names, and I do ghostwriting. So I get really excited when I get to talk to authors who are pros, share with aspiring authors all the great stuff that they're working on, and also kind of go behind the scenes on craft and the process. So we're so excited to have Sonya Lalli with us today. I'm going to read your bio just so that I don't miss any of the good stuff, because it's really packed with exciting information and I can't memorize all that. So I'll read this for our viewers. And I just want to remind everybody throughout this event, you're welcome to post comments in the chat, ask any questions about anything, the book, writing process, and I'll read those forward so that Sonya has a chance to answer them without being too overwhelmed by all your comments. So, but please do comment and enjoy engaging with us as you'd like. So welcome, Sonya. Sonya is a romance and women's fiction author of Indian heritage. Her books have been featured in Entertainment Weekly, NPR, Glamour, The Washington Post, CBC, The Toronto Star, and more. See why I could not memorize that. Her debut novel, The Matchmaker's List, was a Target Diverse Book Club pick, Cityline Book Club pick, and Apple Best Book of the Month. Grown Up Pose of 2020 was a Globe and Mail national bestseller and Amazon Best Book of the Month. Sonya's latest novel, Serena Singh Flips the Script, came out in February 2021, and that's really the book we're going to talk about today, which I adored. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. I will try to rein myself in, but I loved Serena so much, and this book is it's literally in my view, sort of a grown-up coming-of-age story that like every adult really needs. It touches on, I mean, literally, Serena flips the script on every possible topic. So thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you about this book.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was I'm so excited to talk and share and have a chat.
Yay. So did you want to start? Do you want to read just a little bit of the book for us, kind of bring us in with the characters, or tell us a little bit about the premise for people who don't know what it's about, and then share?
Sure. Yeah. So Serena Singh Flips the Script. I mean, it's about a lot of things. It's about a woman who doesn't want to get married and have children, but still is on this coming of age journey, falling in love, figuring out what she wants. And it's also a romance about finding your new best friend. And that was sort of, that was how I started writing it. I had just moved to a new city with my husband. I was working remotely for a job. I didn't know a lot of people in Toronto. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to meet people? How do I socialize? It's so hard making friends as adults. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool to write a romance that's really a main part of the plot is sort of that meet cute and that development and the tension with a new woman in your life who sort of fulfills you in this wonderful way, the way we all need wonderful friendships in our life. So I picked two short scenes from the book that sort of gets a glimpse into Serena's character. The first is just a little part from the first chapter. She's at her baby sister's Indian wedding, and she's looking around, and she's feeling a little bit sad because Serena's 36, and she's realized that she's let a lot of her friendships fall by the wayside. I glanced around the room at Natasha and Mark's friends, suddenly nostalgic for my own group, who I'd hung out with every single day from grade school to high school graduation. We'd been like this once, big groups of us sitting around, dancing, telling one another the same old stories that had defined our friendships, built their foundations, but things were different now that we were older. Just a few years ago, I could count on scores of dynamic, caring women in my life, from school or college or whom I met at work. But one by one, they'd gotten married and had families. And one by one, their commitment to our friendship took a back seat. Our movie nights, weekly phone calls, or Saturday dinners became less and less frequent, morphed into 45-minute catch-ups at a Starbucks near their apartment, when their spouses were at the gym or out of town. They'd forget my birthday or to ask me about the new client I'd scored, but they'd text to remind me I still hadn't RSVP'd for their baby showers. Most of them kept their careers after having children, so it was understandable that they never had time for their single friends in the city, that those few precious moments between working and commuting, bath time and story time, were dedicated to their partner, their hobbies, their own mental health. I wasn't a robot. They were my friends, and I got it. But I didn't have to like it, and I was certainly allowed to resent it. So that part, you get a glimpse into Serena. I mean, she's pretty judgmental at the start of the book. She does have, she does view motherhood and marriage and women who make those decisions in sort of a negative light because of Serena's own experience and her family, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But over the course of the book, she does change. She meets someone who sort of alters her view on these things. And the next little segment I have is when Serena's starting to realize that, she's partially at fault for not having women in her life who she can count on. She also let those friendships go. And she needs to put things right and make more of an effort. And so in this scene, she's just overheard her direct reports. She manages a big team at an advertising agency. She's heard them gossiping about her, and they've just called her a lonely middle manager. So Serena is sort of, this is a bit of a catalyst for Serena. Ginger thought I was just some middle manager. She thought I was lonely. It hurt when the auntie said it, but it hurt more when it came from the mouth of one of my own peers. And maybe it cut so deep because they were right. I'd tried and failed to keep my social circle alive, my passions and interests outside of work. Extracurricular activities were well and good in school and university, but they were hard to keep it as an adult, as a woman of color breaking her back to try and make it in advertising. Now it was safe to say that I'd made it. I was here at the helm, but there wasn't much in my life around the edges. Yes, I had Beckett and Natasha, who'd always be my sister. But what else? Who else? Refusing to feel pathetic, I opened up an internet browser and found one of the websites Beckett had showed me. That very night, there was a book club at a nearby library that I'd never read the memoir they'd selected. There was a board games group, which sounded interesting, but it was being held in somebody's basement, and for all I knew, she was a serial killer. I scrolled down farther, and just then, another option presented itself. Cosmos in Conversation, ladies' night out with some new gal pals. I cringed, imagining Carrie Bradshaw on a bedazzled night out. Even though I'd never really drank, I'd had my fair share of nights out with the gals. That wasn't me anymore. But then again, who was I, really? Not some middle manager. Not just some unmarried, lonely 36-year-old set in her ways, too afraid to try and put herself out there. The event started in 45 minutes at a restaurant on the H Street corridor, and without another thought, I grabbed my credit card and signed up. After all, what's the worst that could happen?
That scene bridges one of the most painful scenes with one of the most hilarious scenes, because when poor Serena, I mean, the struggles that she has being in a position of authority and power and coming in as an outsider to this really intact team, I think especially are poignant since none of us right now really are working on site with teams, and just reading that dynamic and that painful, it was so wonderful to see someone who was so passionate and dedicated to her career, and yet it wasn't this ideal situation. It wasn't like in any way oversimplified or easy. How did you get inspired to write the character of Serena, like this journey that takes her from, her sister's wedding, career, and then kind of comes full circle with the family issues? Do you mind talking a little bit about that character and how you created her?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in my first two books, I wrote women who ultimately did want to get married and have children, and which is a choice a lot of us make, and it's a choice I made. But I really wanted to explore a character about a woman who didn't want those things, and how hard it is, not just for Indian women, for a lot of women in society. If we don't want to get married or have children, it's sort of viewed as some sort of default, or we're wrong in some way. So I thought it was really cool to write a character who was really, really determined in these decisions, who was not going to change her mind, but then also had all these other things to figure out. Like you said, her work situation was not perfect. She spent her whole adult life, putting her career at the helm, and she's got where she's wanted to be. And I thought it was interesting to sort of say, okay, well, this isn't perfect either. You know, she still has to grow, and she still has to sort of keep moving as a person.
Yeah, and did you feel any pressure then to make that change or her growth from the beginning of the book to the end really sharp? Did you feel like, oh, well, if she starts out in this place, I have to completely take her in a different direction? Or is that arc that she went through, the change, a little bit more subtle?
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, this was something I worked on a lot with my editor. I didn't want her to change her mind about what she wanted in life, but I think it was really important for her to understand why she made those decisions and sort of come to terms with her past. So Serena grew up in a very traditional household, and she grew up like a lot of women who don't see equality in their own home, and we see it to a different extent everywhere. But you know, her mother and her father, you know, both worked hard, but her mother took on all the emotional labor, all the domestic labor, and some other things. And Serena really grew up resenting her mother's life and what was expected of her, and decided that she didn't want any of those things. So I think a lot of Serena's journey was really coming to terms with her past and how she was raised, and with her parents.
And to do that in sort of the confines of the genre, that's another question I have for you is, did you struggle at any point thinking, is this really a romance novel? The focus is so much on Serena and her journey. Like, did you feel held back by sort of labels or categories, or did you just put it all in this book and figure your editor would sort it out with you?
I'm more of the latter. So I write romance and women's fiction. So my first book, The Matchmaker's List, was more of a romance novel. Although the main character Rena also went through a journey. I think in any genre of novel, the main character goes through a journey, whether that's big or small or external or internal. And Grown Up Pose was definitely more women's fiction. And Serena Singh, I think is a good mix. And it's not something that I consciously thought about at the beginning. I mean, I love romance. I love love. I mean, love triangle. There's definitely a love triangle in this book. There's definitely, you know, that stuff is really, really important to me. And I love drawing on that. But to be honest, it's not something that was really, really front of mind when I started. That's sort of something that I look back when I edit with my editor.
And when you were going through the process of actually writing the book, then you made some decisions about structure and craft that are not conventional. You know, you don't often see a dual POV novel that isn't the point of view of some of the romantic leads. There's a
Mm-hmm.
triangle for sure, so it would have been tough to bring in a male voice or her partner's voice in some way. Can you talk about the decision you made to bring in that second POV? Why it worked for you?
Sure. So that was not in the first draft, actually. So in my previous books, I always have, you know, every 5, 10 chapters, sort of a substantive flashback chapter that shows our main character when she was younger, in a previous relationship, at a crossroads. And I think, for me personally, I like showing history of the character, sort of understand their current journey and their current obstacles. So in my first draft, I had done that as well, and I'd shown Serena, you know, in her university relationship with Jesse. I'd shown her at her place of worship at the Gurdwara. I'd shown various things that sort of helped. But then when I was talking to my editor Carrie, who is fabulous and can read my soul, she said it would be really interesting to focus on the mother, because Serena's relationship with her mother is really. It's really good to sort of get a sense of both of those generations, and to also see Serena in also a more sympathetic light, because she is very judgmental at the beginning. She doesn't put any blame on herself for why she might feel the way she feels or have the judgment she has about other women, which are not right. And so I think, you know, seeing Serena from the perspective of her mother, who just adores her, but has obviously made some, you know, made some wrong decisions, and just although she tried her best, it really does sort of show Serena, you know, why she is the way she is. So that was a really important thing, I think, for us as we developed.
That's amazing. So even just bringing in that POV, did you feel as you were writing? So maybe I should take a step back. Do you plot, outline, like what's your writing process, or do you really let that character, like the Serena, just drive what's going to flow?
Oh, I'm a plotter. I'm definitely a plotter. I find that I need to know where I'm going. So usually I have, my Scrivener open. I think of like the 3 act structure of all the milestones and sort of character arc. I have sort of a lot of great online resources about doing this, and I always go back to them before I start drafting a novel and think, okay, I need to hit these marks, and then sort of brainstorm how to do it and what could happen, and then I sort of draw that out, and then I pants, I guess you could say. So sometimes it doesn't always happen exactly as I plan, but I find knowing in the general direction of where I want to go is good for me, at least.
It's helpful. So when you then had to do the revisions, let's say, that brought that mother's POV in, did that process feel for you very easy, simple? Was that like, oh my gosh, major revision, heartbreak time? How do you approach that revision process?
I just sit with the comments for a long time. I brainstorm. I have a notepad and just sort of write random ideas down. It was difficult for me because this is the first time I wrote somebody who is not from my generation. I'm writing. It was writing a character that was very, very different from me. Whereas, all the protagonists I've written so far, they're all South Asian. They're all within a certain age range, and the experiences they've had, if I've not experienced them personally, at least I'm familiar with them. Whereas writing immigrant woman who came to this country when she was very young with a young daughter, didn't really speak English, is in a very unequal partnership, doesn't really have a lot of confidence in a lot of ways. That was very different for me. So I talked to my family. I sort of did some Wikipedia and reading and thinking about other people's perspectives. So that was quite a good learning process.
One of the parts of the book that I felt so profoundly painful, but it wasn't sad. Like, I don't want people to get the wrong impression that like this is a tragic story. It's so real. And when I say coming of age for really an adult, that's how it really feels, because when Natasha, she plays such a big role. The book opens at her wedding, and really Serena experiences these moments of realization about herself, her family, really by seeing some things that her sister does in a very different light, not always quite so positively. Like, for you, did you feel any pressure to make Natasha more likable, less likable? Like when you were creating her to support that journey for Serena, what did you feel was really most important in that supporting character?
Right. That's an interesting question, because I think the contrast of Natasha and Serena and how they were raised similarly but very different. So for anyone who hasn't read it, Natasha is Serena's younger sister, who's kind of a brat, I guess you could say. And I think contrasting the two characters does, I think, bode well for Serena, because you kind of see that she's sort of made her way through their complicated upbringing in sort of a more sympathetic light. But I think it was important to try and think about Natasha as more of a complicated character. Yes, she is bratty. Yes, she is spoiled, and yes, she doesn't always come off very flattering. But I think it was important for me not to, and something I worked at, and hopefully came through, that she's not a one-dimensional character either, right? Like, it's so easy to have an antagonist or a villain, to make them all evil or all bad, but I think it's more interesting to show their good qualities too. And Natasha is spoiled, but she also really, really loves Serena, and she's kind of she's silly and she's fun. And there was a reason that Serena and her sister Natasha were best friends for so long.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, just one of those lessons, that having that mom's POV, when you see the same scene where, Natasha wants something that the mom has not prepared, for their meal, and Serena gets very defensive, like, "Moms, I'm working all day. Like, we're here to spend time together. You don't need that." But then the mother comes in and says, appeal to Serena's, reminder that your sister's not this one-dimensional person. Look at the whole picture. Reality is more than just your perspective of it right now. That I
Mm-hmm.
really powerful and didn't make Natasha at all one-dimensional. It really reminded us that Serena's complicated. She's not a simple one-dimensional character that's just going to go from beginning to end and make it easy for us. So can I ask about some of the absolutely hilarious and because for as serious as some of the issues in the book are, there are some scenes that are so unbelievably hilarious. Like I love her. Can we talk about her going to the sex club but not really getting past the beaded curtain?
Yeah. Yeah. So Serena, when she puts herself out there to try and meet women, she really puts herself out there. I mean, she does get conned to get to going, but to the sex club. But when I was trying to make friends, and this is something that I actually thought of as research, because when I was in a new city, I also, was writing the book and also thought, oh, I should try some of these things. So I did go on a Bumble BFF, although I didn't get catfished. Luckily, I went to some really, really awkward book clubs and meetups and, like sports-based groups, that kind of thing. And it was really fun to sort of go to these places where luckily everything was okay at worst and good at best. Like, and to imagine, okay, what's the worst case scenario that could happen? What if I totally pick the wrong person to be friends with and she drags me to a sex club? So it was really fun to sort of to get carried away and imagine what could happen. Yeah, those were really fun to write.
And you have so many scenes where all of the experiences Serena goes through with all of these different groups of women, strangers, people she works with, they feel so awkwardly, painfully real. It's just so beautifully done and so much fun to escape into. And I feel like that's probably what I connected with about the book most is there are so many issues and so many things, but Serena's living what so many women are living, and we're not seeing that story told in so many books, the awkwardness, the pain, the loneliness, but at the same time she's tremendously happy and successful and has all this good in her life. So it's really a very real look at adulthood, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it was I think it's like what a lot of people, go through, and I've talked about this with other people and my friends, and it's like, wow, it is hard to make friends as an adult. It is hard, we do, where some of us are at places where we have like jobs that we love, but everything isn't perfect. And, just balancing everything it's a, when are we really adults? We're constantly moving towards that journey.
Exactly. It's a lie they told us that we arrive there someday. It's always
Exactly.
moving target. What's your writing process like? Do you come up with an idea and then work on that project for a period of time, or do you have a daily practice? If you don't mind, if we get into some of like just your work habits.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a full-time job, and I work. Although recently I went down to 4 days a week, which is a real lifesaver actually. And so I write in the evenings, but predominantly I write on the weekends. So as the first thing I wake up in the morning, Saturday, Sunday morning, I sit down at the kitchen table with a big cup of tea, and then I go as long as I can. I'm not somebody who writes every single day. I think that's really admirable for people who do, but work and family and all things are pretty unpredictable, and so I try not to get too down on myself if I miss a day. But I'm more of a binger. So sometimes I'll go into sort of, okay, I have this amazing idea for the third act, and I'm going to sit down and write, and I'll write 20,000 words, within a few days or weeks. But then I'm so tired that I need to take a week off. So my habit is binging and relaxing for sure.
That's amazing though, because I feel like especially recently there's this sense that if you want to do this thing, which is writing, you've got to quit the day job, be all in, put it all on the line. But a lot of people I don't think realize you can do both. It requires discipline and balance, but you're balancing work, life, you're doing it all. And what's next for you? You've got 4 novels out already and you're working.
No, this is my third, but my fourth novel was moved up to October. So it is, it's definitely more of a leaning on the romance side than women's fiction, but it's called A Holly Jolly Diwali, and it's a Diwali/Christmas holiday romance that comes out this year.
That's so exciting. That's fantastic. Well, and I do want to remind people, please do follow Sonya on social. If you have any other questions in the chat, please pop them in for me. But if you don't mind, I'll ask just 1 or 2 more questions because I love this book so much. So again, when you're talking about sort of your writing habits and your writing process, like how did you start to write romance or even learn to write? I know you have so much education and so many degrees. You've studied law, I believe. How did you land in this space?
So, I've always been, a very avid reader, like a lot of us, but I love romance novels, but I also love lots of other genres. And so, to be completely honest, when I started writing the Matchmaker's List, I didn't know what genre I was writing. I had just started a creative writing 1 year degree, and so it was a really great time to, I was working part time, and I was totally able to really focus on developing my skills, and I was very blessed to have that opportunity. And but I had no idea what I was writing, and it was through lots and lots of writing and revising, and then finally, even when I got an agent, I still didn't know what genre I had written, and then it was developed some more, and then eventually, once I got matched with Berkeley, and it was sort of like at that point, then it was. Then there was another stage of editing where, okay, we need to massage this into the right sort of flow. So that was definitely a very long, the first book, there were lots of rounds of edits, and it was, it was a lot of work, and there were lots of ups and downs, but at the end of the day, and I think this goes for anyone who's, writing in their free time and squeezing it in as you can, we're all doing it because we just love it, right? So even when we're editing, and even when it feels grueling, the process, I just love it so much. So it's really worth it.
Oh, that's so amazing to hear. And that perfectly sort of segues into the advice. I was going to ask your one piece of advice for aspiring authors, anyone who's trying to get their ideas down and maybe doing the same thing, fitting it in around jobs and family and 1,000 other demands. Any writing advice for aspiring writers out there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of just, it goes to what I was saying before. It's just write something that you just love, and just that you can't wait to finish, and can't wait to be a part of, like, I would always, when I was writing Serena Singh, I just could not wait to wake up the next morning to get back to the story. And I guess if you have that sort of passion and that sort of drive for what you're doing, and then it's not going to feel like work. So I guess pick the story that just comes to you like magic or something, it just feels like it's pouring out of you.
It's work, but it shouldn't be drudgery.
Exactly.
Well, Sonya, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with us. I truly love this book, and I hope more people, read it, review it, love it, and we'll look forward to your next release coming out in the fall. But overall, can't say enough about this fantastic story, amazing, independent, strong characters, and I just enjoyed it so much. So thank you for the time sitting down with us, getting to know some of your work and what's coming ahead for you. It's been so great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and hope to chat to you again soon.
Sounds great. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.